My name is Gurpreet Singh, and I'm the Vice President, Managing Director for Integrated Safety at IQVIA. I have been in the pharma industry for about 20 years, and majority of my pharma career I've spent in global drug development, having worked with different kinds of organizations. I've worked for IT-enabled organizations like Cognizant and TCS for a long period of time, and then after that, I worked for Novartis as the global head of pharmacovigilance operations for about 7 years. And now, last 6, 7 years, I've been working with the clinical research industry, uh, working with companies like Parexel and currently with IQVIA. During these 20 years, I've had the opportunity to look at global drug development from different angles, from the pharma company's perspective, from the IT-enabled organization perspective, from the CRO's perspective, and also from a healthcare landscape perspective. How does drug development shape? And what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is about how do I see the trends, what are the challenges and the opportunities that I see within the drug development space. Now, if you look at it, and I'm sure most of you know, the entire process of developing a drug from preclinical research to marketing can take 12 to 18 years, and in most cases, more than $1 billion. Of late, this cost has gone up to even $1.5 billion. Now, some of the top pharmaceutical companies, based on the projected R&D spending in 2026, these are the five, I would say, the top who are spending about 10 to 15% of their annual revenue into drug development, and companies like Roche, Novartis, J&J, Merck, and Pfizer. Really significant amount of their annual revenue is into R&D, which is a good trend because that really shows that large pharma is pretty committed to kind of developing new products for the market. If you look at it, the clinical research organization market is also growing significantly, which is currently to be about $77 billion. By the end of this decade, we are going to be about $130 billion industry. And as you already know that, no company can do drug development in silo. They need to work with clinical research organizations, IT-enabled organizations, and be able to get the products to the market in a faster way with lesser cost. So the clinical research industry growing is a good indication of how many new products are in the pipeline and what's the kind of development happening in this space. Some of the top contract research organizations are companies like IQVIA, LabCorp, Parexel, Icon, and CNOS Health. And these are, again, global companies which are working with large pharma and small pharma to get these molecules faster to the market with lesser cost. The IT companies are also playing an important role. Companies like Accenture, TCS, Cognizant, Wipro, HCL, they're not only providing technology solutions, but also helping in various phases of services to the drug development organizations. And then we have some niche service providers which are really working from the perspective of specific areas like, regulatory affairs or pharmacovigilance, or even for that matter, things like clinical data management. So the overall global drug development environment is really an ecosystem which comprises of the pharma organization that is really the sponsor. And then you have the ecosystem which comprises of IT-enabled organizations, clinical research organizations, and niche service providers. And entirely, this ecosystem is responsible to develop the products and get them to the market. Since 2004, the interesting trend is that the average cost of getting a drug to the market has increased from about $800 million, $1 billion to almost $2.5 billion, which essentially means, and it's not only because of the the labor costs or because of the inflation that's happening, but it's also because getting the products to the market is becoming challenging. It's taking more time consuming, and therefore it's become even more important for pharma companies and the CROs to really work together and see how to get these products to the market at a lesser cost with a faster timeline. So there's a lot of effort that's going on into this space, and that's going to be a trend for the next few years, where the entire ecosystem is going to work on getting these products faster to the market. Now, this drug development landscape has been evolving. In the past, 20 years back, the focus was more about, blockbuster drugs which were developed in-house by large pharmaceutical companies. But the new trend is more looking at inclusive, patient-centric paradigm. We are looking at even a lot of investment in orphan drugs, which in the past obviously did not have much benefits. But now, because of the regulatory requirements and also because of the support that the governments are providing, companies are able to invest in drugs for rare diseases. There's a lot of activity happening in the merger and acquisition space. Large pharma company are acquiring small pharma or small biotech companies to strengthen their pipeline and get novel products to the market. So there's a lot of trend happening from an overall drug development perspective. Now, we all know that to get a drug to the market, it has to go through the main 5 stages, which is of drug discovery and development, preclinical research, clinical trials, regulatory approval, and post-marketing monitoring. Now, the idea really is, how do we really make sure that all of this is done within a shorter span of time, and we are able to do that at a lesser cost? That's where the focus is going to be in the next few years. And while North America continues to be the largest in terms of patent inventorship, we are seeing that the European nations and Asian countries are also contributing significantly, and their contribution in the overall drug development space has increased. And that's going to be another important trend that we will see in the next few years. Here's a snapshot of some of the top pharmas with their pipeline size. And if you look at it, many of these companies have more than 100 products in the pipeline, and many of these are expected to be released over the next 4 to 5 period, which indicates that there is a strong activity happening in the pharma space. And that essentially means that the need for not only good quality of technology, but also good processes and good people is very important for the pharma pipeline to be really managed the way it's progressing. If you look at the global drug development functions, I mean, I would say there are multiple functions which are there in global drug development, but these are the 6, I would say, large functions, and some of them may also have a lot of sub-functions clubbed with it. Obviously, clinical trial management, as the name suggests, is the largest one, which really manages the entire clinical trial end to end, making sure that, the research is done in an appropriate way. Data management is the next big department, which really focuses in analyzing a lot of data that comes in from various sources, including clinical trials, including literature and other aspects. And of late, big data and data analytics is playing a very important role in this space. Biostatistics, as the name suggests, is obviously a need. There is a need in the industry for people with statistical background who understand biology, and there's a niche area where it's important for us to really invest in, and the companies are continuing to invest in that space. Medical writing obviously deals with a lot of documents that are required from the health authority perspective, not only for approvals, but even post-approval. And we've got good quality of people who are working in this space, but obviously the need is always there. Then talking about pharmacovigilance, which by definition is detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse events and adverse reactions. Of late, in the last 20 years, pharmacovigilance has gained a lot of importance. And one of the major reasons, in my view, has been what happened in early 2000 with a drug called Vioxx. Just so that all of you are aware, Vioxx was a drug which was launched in early 2000 for the treatment of arthritis, and it was considered to be a wonder drug. Within the first couple of years, it became a blockbuster, achieving more than $1 billion in sales, and everybody thought this was really the wonder drug for the treatment of arthritis. But a couple of years later, we started seeing a lot of adverse event reports coming in from different parts of the world, and patients who were using this for a prolonged period suffered from, cardiac arrest, myocardial infarction, and other heart-related diseases, resulted in several deaths across the globe, and it also resulted in the company which was responsible for Vioxx to pay billions of dollars in lawsuits to various patients, population across the globe. Now, that was really a turning point in pharmacovigilance, because that really showed the need for pharmacovigilance to be a more proactive area. And not only did health authorities become more stringent, but even the pharma companies themselves evolved to have better systems and better processes, thereby creating a more robust pharmacovigilance department. So in the last 20 years, there's been a significant investment. And right now, if you look at it, pharmacovigilance is one of the most important departments within drug development, which is ensuring patient safety. Although at times it may mean that could impact the revenue of the company, but what's more important within drug development is that the patient safety is of paramount importance. And then the last department here is more regulatory affairs, which is responsible to work with all the health authorities, make sure the companies are ready for inspection, audit, and there's a lot of activities going on in the regulatory space as well. Now, looking at the drug development functions, there are four key elements within drug development. If you look at on the left side, I'm talking about process. And as you all would know, drug development has very well established processes. All of these are obviously documented in standard operating procedures. But off late, the trend is really to relook at these procedures, relook at ways of making these procedures more efficient, look at, how can these processes become more lean, and they can be then, help to kind of expedite the process of drug development. So there's a lot of activity going on the SOP development upgradation space, but also looking at how Six Sigma and other methodologies could be used to enhance these processes. On the bottom, if you see technology, and technology has been playing an important role. While many people might say that digital transformation is fairly new, in drug development, digital transformation has been happening for more than 20 years now. When I started my career way back in drug development, the adverse event reports used to come as paper cases, which were then processed into a database and were submitted manually. Today, all of that has become paperless. So technology has ensured that we've got good systems and good databases which can help us to do everything electronically. And of late, we've also brought in a lot of activities which include robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, and now we're talking about agentic AI. All of these are being developed as part of the overall drug development roadmap. So in the last 4 or 5 years, obviously the progress has been faster, but the next 4 or 5 years are even more promising and more exciting as far as the technology adoption in drug development is concerned. Then you look on the right side, we're talking about partnerships. Now, none of the drug development activities can happen without successful partnerships. And one of the things which has really evolved in the last 20 years is the outsourcing space. What really started as operational or very transactional outsourcing has now become more strategic. Now, pharma companies are looking at partners who can work with them for a long-term perspective, who can bring in the strategic element, who can not only help them from a services and operations perspective, but also from the perspective of bringing in the consulting activities, bringing in the technology benefits. And therefore, pharma companies tend to work with partners for a long time so that they can really bring in that strategic element. Of all of these, the most important really in my view is the people part of it. While drug development can really work with process technology partnerships, what's important is really the right people with the right skills, right attitude. And a lot of investment is happening in this space. Pharma companies are investing in hiring the right talent, developing them, and obviously retaining them, because once you lose a talent in this space, it's not easy to get back that same level of expertise. And now with technology coming in, the need is there for people to not only have good understanding of the biology, but also to understand elements of technologies to be able to manage their work more efficiently. So people, process, technology, and partnership continue to be the pillars of global drug development, and the trend clearly shows that this is where the industry is investing significantly as we move forward. I've covered some of these already. If you look at it, quality and compliance and process excellence are more a part of the process pillar, where companies are really focusing on good quality of work and making sure that we are compliant with health authority requirements. But at the same time, there's a lot of effort going on from a Six Sigma perspective to really make the processes more robust. On the bottom, if you see digital transformation, data analytics, really part of the technology pillar or element, where companies are investing not only in terms of technology, but also in the better use of data. How do we really analyze this data so that there can be meaningful conclusions? A few years back, when I was working on a forecasting tool, it was challenging. But today, with all of the available tools and data sets, it's very easy for us to really develop forecasting and other tools. So that's a very positive trend that we can see. Then if you see, there's a lot of development of focus on organization culture and talent management, really the people pillar. How do we really make sure that we have the right culture, the innovative mindset, so that, companies can come up with newer ideas, really bringing in that value of, people contributing to the overall organization growth. And then these talent that we have, how do we develop them and retain them? Outsourcing, as I've already said, has been a very important element, and it will continue to be an important trend. What's really happening in the last 5 years specifically has been the trend in mergers and acquisitions. Whether it was the acquisition of Seagen by Pfizer in 2023 for about $43 billion, or the more recent acquisitions that most of the big pharma are doing, there's a lot of activity happening in the mergers and acquisition space. Obviously, large pharma wants to make its portfolio bigger, so they are acquiring smaller companies. But then there are also mergers where entities are merging together to create a stronger consolidated environment. There are also a lot of demergers happening in the last 4 5 years. If you look at it, for example, Sanofi has offspun its consumer health division to call Opella. J&J has offspun its consumer health division calling Kenvue. Novartis has offspun its generics, which is called Sandoz. So there's a lot of demergers happening because companies have realized that there is a need for independent entities to really focus on their strengths and drive the business models depending upon the target patient population that you're looking at. So that demergers and acquisitions and mergers is a very important trend which we'll continue to see over the next few years, which essentially means that there will be more work for the drug development industry as a whole. And then the last but not the least is the budget. All of the drug development activities, as I mentioned before, has to be done within a budget. How do we really manage all of these activities within the budget is where the industry is now putting a lot of effort in. And we are pretty much on track to really involve some of these process efficiencies, technologies, and talent to really be able to cost also optimize the getting a drug to the market in a faster way. Now, I will cover some of the top trends that are happening from an overall drug development perspective. So if you look at it, the first one really is personalized medicine. Personalized medicine, if you look at it, is a customized approach to drug development, which allows medications and dosing to be more finely adapted depending on the patient's genome, environment, and prognosis. And obviously, it brings in the benefit of greater efficacy and fewer adverse drug events. And the good news is that we already have some good examples of personalized drug applications, whether it's the development of trastuzumab or whether it's the treatment of HER2 positive breast cancers, or even for that matter, the refined dosing for anticoagulant warfarin. So there's a lot of focus on personalized medicine, and the next few years we'll see this really moving in the right direction from the patient perspective. As I've already mentioned before, there is a lot of development in the orphan drug space, which was obviously not an area many of the pharma companies were interested a few years back. But now, with a lot of focus from the health authorities and also from the government, which is giving pharmaceutical companies incentives in the form of tax credits, companies have started investing a lot in orphan drugs. There is an orphan drug conference which happens every year, and we really talk about how could we really bring in drugs for treatment of rare diseases. That's going to be an important trend for the next few years. We're talking about decentralized clinical trials. Gone are the days when we were looking at only the random RCT kind of trials where we need to make sure that patients have to visit. We're really talking about how can we reduce the barriers to participation, how can we bring in greater patient interest and retention, and also allowing the researchers an access to a larger, more diversified population of patients. And this is where I think the trend is going to change, where we are going to continue to invest more in decentralized clinical trials so that we could really bring in better data sets for us to be able to take our decisions. The growing use of contract research organizations, while it says in 2018 survey it was 61% of the activities were outsourced, off late you would see it's more than 70%. And this will continue to happen because, like I said before, pharma companies need an ecosystem to develop the drugs for the market, and the use of clinical research organization not only helps them to reduce the cost, but also helps them to get the best expertise available in the world to be able to drive efficiency and get the products faster to the market. The next important trend, and this is what obviously COVID has taught us, is mRNA vaccines could be an important game changer. We're already talking about mRNA-based vaccines to treat viruses and diseases like cancer, and I think there will be a lot of focus and investment in this space as the trend continues. We're talking about biosimilar adoption. We all know that biosimilars are expensive. It's a huge cost on the healthcare market, but I think what companies are now looking at is really to come up with biological products that are essentially similar to the existing approved biological product and looking at how can we reduce the cost on the healthcare system. And the data says that we could already save about $10 billion in 2015 since the biosimilars have started. Now, this is going to be an important area. Most of the companies that I'm aware of are really having their own biosimilar divisions to really look at how they could come up with these molecules in a faster way and help reduce the healthcare cost burden that the world is facing through. Mergers and acquisitions I already touched upon, but there is also an interesting trend of venture capital trends. Companies which were no way connected to pharma in the last few years have now started investing significantly in pharma, especially after the pandemic, because they realize that this is an area which requires a lot of investment. If you look at the latest report from KPMG, it says that artificial intelligence has touched very little part of the healthcare so far. It's just touched the tip of the iceberg, and there is a lot of activity which is still required to be done, which will be done in the next 10 years as far as artificial intelligence in healthcare is there. And that's what I think the trend venture capitalists have seen. And there's a lot of investment in drug development from that particular area. Talking about that, artificial intelligence in healthcare, the market is expected to continue to grow at about 60%, which is huge. And we're expecting that the next 10, 15 years are going to be significant in the healthcare space and the adoption of artificial intelligence, because what we've done so far is bare minimum. And this will also mean that there will be ample room for integration of smart devices, diagnostics, wearable technologies. And the industry will continue to focus on novel ways to enhance the medication properties, which will also mean that more and more technology adoption will bring in those benefits in the next few years. Combination therapies are going to be important. Obviously, most of the diseases or many diseases require polypharmacy. It's important to look at how these combination of drugs can effectively target the multiple pathways. Researchers have been really working to find out novel combinations, not only to enhance the therapeutic outcome, but also to reduce adverse events due to multiple drugs, or to reduce the resistance that could come in by usage of multiple drugs. So there's a lot of work happening in this space, and the next few years we'll continue to invest in looking at combination therapies. And the last one here is really drug repurposing. I'm sure all of you know about minoxidil and how it was repurposed for hair growth. But there are many other examples where companies are really investing because we already know the side effect profiles of the existing drugs. It's not that difficult for us to then identify what could be other indications where that drug could be effective. And there is a lot of activity and research happening in this space, and this will continue to be an important area because developing a drug right from scratch obviously takes a lot of money and time. But if there's a drug for which we already have a known safety profile, then for us to identify new indications and move that forward could save us some time and some money. But that's really the intention there. That was pretty much my last slide. I'm open for any questions. Please feel free to ask any questions that you may have at this point of time.